Look around the room and count the separate things inside it. A chair, a cup, a window, the two hands in your lap. The count feels obvious, as if reality came already carved into objects. Each thing keeps to its own place, its own edges, its own existence. This assumption sits so deep that almost no one ever inspects it. It may be one of the oldest mistakes we make. Take any single object from your count and press on it. The cup has parts, a handle, a rim, a curved ceramic wall. Something has to bind those parts into one cup rather than many. Name that binding, and you have to say what kind of thing it is. Is the bond itself another part, or something standing outside the parts? Either answer, as we will see, opens a door that does not close. Behind the simple question of how many things exist lies a deeper one. What makes any one thing genuinely one, and not a crowd wearing a name? 3 answers have survived every attempt to kill them. Reality is many, the plain view that the world is a heap of separate items. Reality is one, the strange view that all division is surface and the whole is the only true thing. Or the question is broken, and counting things is the wrong move from the start. This is not a museum tour of dead opinions. Each answer is alive right now, in physics, in logic, in the study of mind. And the strongest case for the oneness of everything is recent, not ancient. We begin where the trouble begins, with the simple act of counting. Part 1. The problem of the many. Start with the view almost everyone holds without ever arguing for it. The world is a vast collection of distinct things, side by side. Mountains, rivers, animals, people, grains of sand, far-off stars. Each one is itself, bounded and separate, however near its neighbours. Science seems to confirm this, breaking matter into smaller and smaller pieces. Molecules, then atoms, then particles, a world built from tiny bricks. On this view, to exist is to be one item among many. The trouble starts when you ask where one thing stops and the next begins. Take a single cloud drifting across a clear afternoon sky. It looks like one object with a shape you could trace, but at its edges the water droplets thin out gradually into open air. There is no exact droplet where the cloud ends and the sky starts. Pick any boundary, and a slightly larger or smaller cloud has equal claim. So, how many clouds are there? 1 or millions of overlapping candidates? The philosopher Peter Unger pressed this puzzle and gave it a name. He called it the problem of the many, and it resists every easy answer. Now make the problem harder by turning from edges to parts. A wooden table is nothing more than a heap of particles in a certain arrangement. Move them slightly and you have a new arrangement of the same particles. So is the table a real extra thing, beyond the particles themselves? When do many parts ever add up to one genuine new object? This is the question of composition, and it has no agreed answer. Some say parts compose a whole only sometimes, under special conditions. Others say they always do, so every random scatter forms an object. Still others say they never do, and only the smallest parts exist. These local puzzles all point toward one large fork in the road. How many fundamental things are there when you count what is truly basic? The pluralist answers many, treating the small parts as the real foundation. The monist answers one, treating the whole universe as the real foundation. A third voice rejects the count, denying that reality divides into things at all. Each position will turn out to have a powerful, disciplined argument behind it. And each pays a price that its rivals are quick to name. This is not a problem you can leave in the seminar room. Your own body replaces most of its atoms over the course of years. The matter that composed you as a child is almost entirely gone now, yet you call yourself the same person across that complete exchange of parts. The ancient ship of Theseus made the same point with timber. Replace every plank one by one and ask whether the ship survived. If a thing can swap all its parts and persist, what exactly persisted? Not the matter which changed, but some unity riding on top of it. Locating that unity is the whole difficulty pressed into a single word. Most thinkers treat plurality as obvious, and the unity of a thing as the puzzle. One ancient Greek reversed the burden in the most radical way imaginable. He argued that plurality is not merely hard to ground, but strictly impossible. Reason itself, he claimed, forbids the world from being many. If he is right, the count you began with was wrong at the very first item. His name was Parmenides, and his argument has still not been cleanly answered. Part 2. Parmenides and the argument against plurality. Parmenides built his entire case on a single rule about thought and language. Whatever you can think about or speak of must, in some sense, be. When you think, your thought reaches towards something there to be thought. Try to think about sheer nothing, about what is not in any way. Your thought finds no object, nothing to land on, and quietly fails. So there are two roads, he said, and only one can be travelled. The road that says is, and the road that says is not. The second road leads nowhere, because what is not cannot be grasped or named. From this one rule, startling conclusions follow with almost mechanical force. Ask whether what is could ever have come into being. It would have to come either from what is not or from what already is. From what is not, nothing can come, since not being offers nothing to work with. From what already is, nothing new comes, since it was there all along. So being never came to be, and by the same logic can never perish. It cannot slip away into what is not, because there is no such destination. The same blade cuts against change of every kind. For a thing to change is for it to become what it currently is not. But the path into is not is closed, so genuine change is barred. Then comes the boldest step, the denial of all division. To split being into parts, you need gaps of not being between them. A gap is a stretch of nothing, and nothing is not there to separate anything. Without real gaps, being has no inner seams, and so cannot be many. It is one continuous whole, ungenerated, unchanging, undivided, complete. Your eyes report a world of many things, moving and changing without pause. Parmenides answers that the senses trace only appearance, never what truly is. The many is a kind of mortal habit, a way of opinion, not knowledge. Reason, following the rule about being, overrules the testimony of the I. The verdict is total. Plurality and change are illusions laid over a single being. This sounds like a position no one could defend against plain common sense. His student Zeno defended it by attacking the alternative instead. If reality is many, Zeno argued, you fall into contradiction at once. Take motion, which assumes a runner can cross the space to a finish line. To reach the end, the runner must first reach the halfway point. To reach that, the runner must first cross half of the half, and so on. The distance splits into endless smaller stretches that can never all be completed. So motion, taken as crossing a divisible space, appears to be impossible. Zeno offered many such puzzles, each turning plurality against itself. His aim was not paradox for sport, but a defence of the one. Now the careful part, where current scholarship refuses any easy summary. For centuries, Parmenides was read as a strict monist, holding that exactly one thing exists. Many specialists today read him differently, as setting conditions on what counts as real. On this reading, he tells us what any genuine being must be like. It must be ungenerated, changeless, and whole, however many such beings there turn out to be. The thinkers who followed him took exactly this lesson and ran with it. Empedocles, Anaxagoras, and the early atomists kept his demands on real being. Then they applied those demands to many basic elements rather than to one. So the founders of ancient pluralism may have been his students, not his enemies. The deepest objection strikes the very rule that started everything. Parmenides leans on a single word, is, as if it carried one meaning. Modern logic separates at least three jobs that this small word performs. There is the is of existence, as when we say dragons are not. There is the is of predication, as when we say the grass is not red, and there is the is of identity, as when we say Cicero is Tully. When you say the grass is not red, you do not summon pure nothing. You say only that the grass differs from the red things, a harmless fact. Plato saw this first, treating not being as mere difference, as being other than. Once is not means differs from, the gaps return as ordinary distinctness. And with real distinctness, division and plurality walk back into the world. The whole argument may rest on hearing one meaning in a word with several. Suppose the objection lands and the road of is not reopens. Does monism die with it, or can the one be rebuilt on firmer ground? A later thinker accepted that things differ and still reached a single reality. He started not from being in general, but from a sharper idea, independence. What does it take, he asked, to be a thing that stands on its own? His name was Spinoza, and his answer left room for only one such thing. Part 3. Spinoza and the One Substance. Spinoza refused to start with being in the abstract. He started from a question Descartes had already sharpened, about what a thing is. Descartes had defined a substance as whatever depends on nothing else to exist. A true thing, on this definition, leans on no other thing in order to be. It stands on its own, the sole owner of its own existence. Now hold that definition firmly and ask a single simple question. How many things in the world are independent in this strict, unforgiving sense? Spinoza fixed his terms with a precision that does all the later work. A substance is what exists in itself and is understood through itself alone. An attribute is a basic way a substance is, what its essence consists in. Thought is one such attribute, and spatial extension is another. A mode is not a thing, but a way a substance is arranged. A wave on the sea is a mode of the sea, not a second ocean. And God, for Spinoza, is the substance that has every attribute there is. From these terms, a tight argument runs straight to a single conclusion. First, no two distinct substances can share even one attribute. Substances can be told apart only by their attributes, since modes come later. If two had every attribute in common, nothing would distinguish them, so they are one. Second, the substance holding all attributes, namely God, exists. Spinoza argues this in the manner of the old proofs from the idea of God. Grant it for now, and watch the trap close around plurality. If God already holds every attribute, none is left over for a second substance. But a substance needs at least one attribute in order to exist. So no second substance is possible, and there is exactly one, God or nature. Everything else that exists is a mode, a way this one substance is. Take the conclusion seriously, and the familiar world quietly transforms. The apple, the storm, the person reading this, none is a thing on its own. Each is a local pattern in one substance, the way a wave is the sea behaving. A wave has a shape, a speed, a place, and it travels for a while. Yet it owns no water of its own. It is the ocean, waving. On this view, you are not a separate thing that the universe contains. You are the universe, locally arranged into the pattern you call yourself. This is not a relic of old metaphysics. It is the spine of a very modern picture. Many scientists describe one physical system with us as passing patterns inside it. Einstein, asked about his religion, said he believed in the God of Spinoza. He meant the lawful order of nature itself, not a person who answers prayers. The popular line that we are the cosmos experiencing itself is Spinoza, flattened. Flattened because his one substance is not a mind awake inside every stone. The idea earns its power from the argument, not from the slogan. The argument is beautiful, and most philosophers think it does not quite work. The whole structure rests on the claim that no two substances share an attribute. Why could there not be two extended substances, told apart by their modes? Spinoza insists modes cannot distinguish substances, but that insistence is exactly what is doubted. A second crack opens between two words, infinite and all. God is defined as having infinitely many attributes, which need not mean every one. If even a single attribute lies outside God, a rival substance could claim it. Then independence would come in more than one kind, and the one would split. The leap from being independent to being unique is the real pressure point. Cut that single thread, and the cosmos is free to be many again. Even readers who accept the One find something cold in Spinoza's version. His single substance simply is complete and changeless, like a frozen totality. Its modes follow from it by necessity, but the substance neither grows nor strives. Soon after, Kant raised a different alarm about reaching reality at all. He argued the thing in itself lies forever behind our experience, unknowable. If a wall stands between thought and being, how could we ever know the One? The next generation answered by placing the whole inside thought and its negations. They began from a strange claim. To be something is to negate everything else. Part 4. The true is the whole. Spinoza left a single substance, but it sat still, like a finished statue. Its differences were effects that flowed from it, not life stirring within it. Kant left a sharper wound, a wall between our thought and reality itself. He held that the thing in itself stays hidden behind everything we experience. Two problems now faced anyone who wanted the One to be more than a guess. How can the whole contain real difference, and how can thought reach it at all? Schelling answered with one bold identification at the root of things. Mind and nature, he said, are two faces of a single absolute identity. Nature is spirit made visible, and spirit is nature turned inward. Knowing is possible because the knower and the known are the same at bottom. Thought can reach being because thought and being were never truly two. At its deepest level, this identity is pure and balanced, free of all difference. Hegel admired this picture and then attacked it without mercy. An absolute that is bare sameness, he said, cannot explain a single real thing. From perfect undifferentiated identity, you can never reach the world we actually meet. He mocked it with a line that has outlived the quarrel that produced it. Such an absolute, he wrote, is the night in which all cows are black. A blank that swallows every difference is not an explanation, but a refusal to explain. In its place, Hegel put a single engine that drives his entire system. To be something definite is, at the same time, to not be everything else. He borrowed a phrase and pushed it hard. All determination is negation. A thing has its identity only by standing against what it is not. Pull on any determinate thing, and its opposite comes attached to it. So nothing finite stands fully on its own. Each one points past itself to others. The finite is restless, always referring beyond its own borders. Test this with the plainest concepts you own. The idea of up carries no meaning at all without the idea of down. North is nothing on its own. It is the not south, and only that. Try to think one pole in complete isolation, and it dissolves in your hands. Its whole content was the contrast, the negation of its missing partner. Determinate being, Hegel saw, is shot through with the things it is not. His most famous scene turns this logic loose on two human beings. A master rules a bondsman and seems the independent one in the pair. But the master is a master only by being recognized as one, and the only one there to recognize him is the bondsman he dominates. His lordly identity hangs entirely on the person he treats as nothing. The independent pole, examined closely, depends on the pole it scorns. Self-standing identity, even here, turns out to be borrowed from its opposite. Run this reasoning everywhere, and one conclusion forces itself on you. If every finite thing depends on what it excludes, none is truly self-standing. Only the whole, holding all the differences together, depends on nothing outside. There is, by definition, nothing outside the whole for it to depend on. This is what Hegel means by the line, "The true is the whole," and the whole is no frozen lump, no still substance like Spinoza's. It is a process that generates its own differences and gathers them back. Substance, he insists, must be grasped as subject, as self-developing life. The absolute is fully itself only at the end as result, not as start. One great contemporary kept the single reality and threw out the optimism. Schopenhauer agreed that behind the many appearances lies one undivided thing. He called it will, a blind striving that individuation only seems to divide. The boundaries between separate beings belong to appearance, not to the one in itself. Here is the same monism of the depths the idealist reached for. But Schopenhauer's one does not know itself, and it does not improve. It is hungry, aimless force, where Hegel saw reason coming to consciousness. The system is vast, and one objection cuts straight at its foundation. Hegel moves from how concepts depend on each other to how things do. Grant that north has no meaning without south, that the words lean on each other. It does not follow that the things themselves cannot exist apart. From you cannot define A without B, you do not get A cannot exist without B. And you certainly do not get that A and B are secretly one thing. Critics charged Hegel with confusing the order of meaning with the order of being. Dependence among ideas may say nothing about dependence among the objects out there. This objection has never been fully silenced, only answered and answered again. Hegel made relation and negation the very heart of what it is to be, but he worked mostly through concepts, through meaning and its movement. The next thinker attacked the idea of relation itself with a cold, logical blade. He tried to prove that relations are not merely deep, but flatly impossible. If relations cannot be real, then reality cannot be a web of separate things. It would have to be one seamless whole, with every division a mere appearance. His name was Bradley, and his argument is still being fought over today. Part 5. Bradley's War on Relations. Return to the ordinary world and notice how much of it is relations. The cup sits on the table, and your city lies north of mine. 3 is greater than 2, and the lamp stands beside the book. Strip out every relation, and the world loses its arrangement entirely. Relations look like the most undeniable furniture of reality there is. Bradley set out to show that this furniture cannot survive a close look. He began with something as plain as a lump of sugar. It seems to be one thing carrying several qualities at once. It is white and sweet and hard, all in the same small object. Ask a quiet question. What ties each quality to the lump? Say a relation does the tying, a link between the sugar and its whiteness. Now, that relation is itself a new item in your account of things. And a new item raises the very question it was brought in to settle. How is that relation itself tied to the sugar and to the whiteness? If it floats free, it joins nothing, and the qualities fall apart again. So it needs a further relation to fasten it to each of its terms. Take the first relation, the one meant to link the sugar and its whiteness. That relation now has to be linked to the sugar, which needs a second relation. And the second relation has to be linked in turn, which needs a third. The series never ends, and the connecting is always one relation short. The link you added to unite things needs an endless chain of further links. Bradley drew the hard conclusion the regress seemed to force on him. The whole relational way of thinking, he said, collapses into incoherence. Relations cannot do the uniting we demand of them, so they cannot be real. And without real relations, the separate terms they linked cannot be real either. What remains is one undivided whole, with no genuine seams inside it. The many things and their relations sink to the level of appearance. Reality for Bradley is a single seamless experience, and the rest is surface. You might expect this argument to have died with Victorian philosophy. Instead, it returned, sharpened, in the metaphysics of the last 20 years. Jonathan Schaffer revived a version under the banner of internal relations. If each thing's very nature involves its relations to the others, none stands alone. Every part then leans on the rest, and through them on the whole. From there, he argues, the whole is prior, the true foundation of its parts. This is a softer conclusion than Bradley's, and we will return to it soon. The classic reply came from Bertrand Russell, in revolt against this whole tradition. Russell held that relations are perfectly real, and that they are external. A relation relates its terms simply by being the relation that it is. You do not need a second relation to glue the first one to its terms. To demand that is to picture a relation as an object sitting between things. But a relation is not a bead on a string, needing more string to hold it. Relating is what it does, not a further task it must hire help to finish. On this view, the regress is harmless, because no extra links are ever required. Critics add a sharper charge against Bradley's starting point itself. He may have assumed the undivided whole from the outset as the natural default. If so, his demand that all difference be grounded simply built in the answer. Whether the regress truly bites remains even now an open dispute. So two camps face off over a single, surprisingly narrow question. Does a relation need something further to fasten it to the things it relates? Say yes, and the world threatens to melt into one seamless whole. Say no, and the many things keep their relations and their separate lives. But this entire battle has quietly assumed something we never checked. Does the universe, the largest whole of all, even exist as one object? And do composite things, tables and clouds and bodies, exist at all? The next stretch of the argument turns there and changes the question itself. Monism stops being about how many things exist and becomes about what is basic. Part 6. The Pluralist Rebellion. We have followed the case for the one from Parmenides down to Bradley. Each thinker tried to show that division is surface and the whole is real. An equally serious tradition argued the reverse, and with the same rigour. Reality, it holds, is fundamentally many, a vast field of distinct things. This is not naive common sense. It is a position with hard arguments. To judge monism fairly, we have to meet the rebellion at full strength. The sharpest weapon for the many came from David Hume. Take any two things you can clearly tell apart, a stone and the table under it. You can conceive the stone existing with no table and the table with no stone. Whatever the mind can clearly separate in thought, Hume argued, can exist apart. So, genuinely distinct things are distinct existences, not secretly one thing. The monist must call this separateness an illusion laid over a deeper unity. Hume hands the burden back, asking what bond could fuse them into one. Between distinct existences, he found no necessary connection at all. Leibniz built a positive pluralism more radical than common sense would dare. The world he held is made of countless simple substances he called monads. A monad is simple in the strict sense, with no parts whatever. Reality bottoms out in an infinity of these ultimate indivisible units. Stranger still, Leibniz said the monads never interact or touch each other. Each unfolds on its own, mirroring the whole universe from its private viewpoint. Their harmony is arranged in advance, like clocks set to chime together. Here pluralism reaches its limit, with parts so separate they cannot even meet. The decisive modern revolt came from Bertrand Russell and George Edward Moore. They had been raised on the British idealism of Bradley and his school. They broke from it hard and built a philosophy of separate things. Russell called his view logical atomism, and its picture is plain enough. The world is a great many independent facts, not one seamless block. And relations, against Bradley, are perfectly real and external to their terms. The cup truly stands on the table, with no regress swallowing the relation. Reality is a mosaic of distinct items held in genuine relations. Today, the pluralist rarely says that only the tiny parts exist. The refined view is about priority, about which things are fundamental. Priority pluralism holds that the smallest parts are basic and the whole derived. Explanation snakes upward from the particles to everything they compose. The cosmos is real, but it is a result built from its independent parts. This is the living mirror image of the monism we have been tracing. The pluralist position is strong, and it carries two heavy debts. First, it owes an account of what the fundamental parts actually are. If physics never reaches a smallest part, the promised foundation is missing. Second, it must answer a strange result from physics about wholes. Some systems, we will see, have features their separate parts do not fix. If wholes can outrun their parts, the upward story starts to wobble. Both camps have been arguing as if the question were how many things exist. One says many basic things, the other says one, and they trade blows. But a prior question sits underneath the whole dispute, unexamined. When do parts ever combine to make a genuine new object at all? Does stacking particles produce a table? And do all the particles make a cosmos? Until we answer that, we do not even know the universe is one thing to count. Part 7. Does the whole exist at all? Monism says the universe is one thing, or one fundamental thing. That sentence smuggles in a claim we have never paused to check. It assumes there is such an object as the universe, a single whole of all parts. Grant the particles and ask whether they also add up to one further thing. The American philosopher Peter van Inwagen made this the sharpest question in the field. Under what conditions, he asked, do some things compose a further thing? He called it the special composition question, and it has no easy answer. Put the problem in front of you with a simple box. Inside sit 3 particles and nothing else, floating in the dark. Now ask the deceptively plain question of how many objects the box holds. One natural answer is 3, the 3 particles, and that is all. Another answer is 7, once you count every combination as its own object. The 3 singles, the 3 possible pairs, and the 1 trio make 7. Same particles, same box, yet the inventory swings from 3 to 7. The disagreement is not about the matter, but about how many things it makes. The first answer says parts never compose a further thing at all. This view is called mereological nihilism, the denial of composite objects. There are no tables, no chairs, no mountains on this account. There are only simples arranged table-wise or mountain-wise in a region. The word table is a useful way of talking, not the name of a thing. If the nihilist is right, there is no cosmos either, only particles. And then monism has no single object to be a theory about. The opposite answer says parts always compose a further thing. This is mereological universalism, and composition is completely unrestricted. Any objects, whatever, however scattered, form one more object together. Your left shoe, the planet Saturn, and a distant star compose a thing. It has no name and no use, but on this view it is as real as you. Universalism does give the monist a cosmos, the sum of absolutely everything. But it floods the world with countless bizarre objects alongside it. Between the extremes sits the moderate answer, that parts compose only sometimes. Van Inwagen himself defended a striking version he called organicism. Parts compose a further thing only when their activity constitutes a life. So living organisms are real composite things, genuine unities of their parts. But tables, stars, and the cosmos are not, since they fail the test of life. It saves you and the cat while denying the chair you sit on. Every answer here pays in counterintuitive coin, and none comes for free. Notice what this does to the simple slogan that all is one. To say the cosmos is the only thing, you need a precise story. The cosmos must exist as an object, while its apparent parts do not. One modern route to that conclusion runs through the puzzle of vagueness. Every ordinary object, recall, has fuzzy and indefinite boundaries. Some philosophers hold that reality itself cannot be fuzzy or indefinite. A sharp world, then, has either no composite objects or one with no parts. That single partless object would be the whole universe, exact at every edge. These are quarrels about the inventory, about what makes a list of things, but the monist may not need to win that quarrel at all. Perhaps the cosmos and its parts both exist, with no contest there. Perhaps the real question was never how many things there are. Perhaps it is which of them is fundamental, and which depends on the other. That reframing is what brought monism roaring back into serious philosophy. Part 8. Priority, not existence. The crucial move belongs to the philosopher Jonathan Schaffer, working today. He saw that monism had been fighting on the wrong ground for centuries. The hard claim is that only one thing exists, with no real parts. That claim is a tough sell, and it makes monism easy to dismiss. There is a softer, stronger claim hiding behind the old one. Not that one thing exists, but that one thing is fundamental. Hold apart two questions that the tradition kept running together. One question asks how many things exist, the matter of the inventory. The other asks which things are basic and which depend on them. Existence monism answers the first, holding that only the cosmos exists. Priority monism answers the second, a far more defensible position. The parts are perfectly real, but they are simply not the foundation. Now the whole dispute sharpens into a single question of direction. Both sides agree the particles exist, and that the cosmos exists too. They disagree about which way the dependence runs between them. The pluralist says the parts are basic and the whole is built upward. The monist says the whole is basic and the parts are carved downward. One leaves the pie whole, while the other slices it into pieces first. Schaffer frames both sides with one shared rule, the tiling constraint. The basic things, whatever they are, must cover reality with no gaps. They must also not overlap, each portion counted once and only once. Given that, only two clean options remain on the table. Either the one whole is basic, or the many smallest parts are. To decide between them, ask what kind of thing the cosmos is. Some wholes are mere heaps, where the parts clearly come first. A pile of sand is nothing over and above its separate grains. Other wholes are integrated, where the whole comes first instead. A living body is not a heap of independent organs and cells. Cut a hand from the body, and it is a hand in name only. Its very nature was to be a working part of that one organism. Schaffer argues the cosmos is far more like the body than the sand. It is one connected system, governed by law, and its parts are arbitrary slices of it. If the cosmos is an integrated whole, then the whole is prior to its parts. The deepest objection asks how one thing can be so varied within itself. The cosmos is red here and green there, hot in places and cold in others. A single fundamental thing, the critic says, ought to be uniform throughout. How can one undivided object carry 1,000 different qualities at once? Schaffer answers by appealing to what are called distributional properties. Think of a single ball painted in red and white polka dots. It is one object, not a committee of separately coloured pieces. Yet it carries a pattern, being red here and white there, all at once. The cosmos likewise can be one thing with a richly varied internal pattern. Critics find this strained, and whether the cosmos is truly integrated stays disputed. So the case for the one now rests on a single testable claim. The cosmos must be an integrated whole, not a loose heap of parts. So far, that claim has leaned mostly on metaphysical intuition. The pluralist will say physics tells the opposite story, all particles and pieces. But 20th century physics delivered a shock to that confident picture. Its deepest theory suggests the world resists being split into separate parts. Part 9. The quantum argument for the whole. Quantum mechanics is the most precisely tested theory in the history of science. It also carries a strange message about wholes and their parts. Start with the older, classical picture that it overturned. In classical physics, the whole is fixed entirely by its parts. Know each particle's position and motion and the arrangement among them. From that complete list, every fact about the whole follows. The whole is nothing extra, just the parts arranged side by side. Quantum mechanics breaks that picture with a phenomenon called entanglement. Prepare two particles together in a single joint state, then separate them. Take the case where their total spin is fixed at 0. Spin is a measurable property, pointing up or down along any axis you choose. What is strange is that neither particle alone has a definite spin. Yet the pair together has a definite property that the two spins oppose. Measure one particle and find it up, and the other is instantly down. This holds however far apart you have carried them across a room or a galaxy. Now ask where that information about the pair is actually stored. It is not in the first particle, which had no definite spin of its own. It is not in the second particle, which had none either, and it is not in any ordinary relation of distance or angle between them. The fact about the pair lives only in the joint state of the whole. This is non-separability, and it is the heart of the matter. The state of the whole is not fixed by the states of its parts. The whole carries a property that its parts, plus their arrangement, leave open. You might suspect the particles secretly had definite spins all along. Maybe each carried a hidden instruction, and we simply could not read it. The physicist John Bell proved that this comforting idea cannot work. He showed any theory of separate locally fixed parts obeys a strict limit. The observed correlations must stay below a certain mathematical ceiling. Quantum mechanics predicts that the ceiling is broken, and broken often. Experiments precise enough to win a Nobel Prize have confirmed the violation. The wholeness is real, and it cannot be reduced to independent parts. Schaffer turns this physics directly into an argument for the priority of the whole. Entangled systems have properties not fixed by their parts, as we just saw. When a whole has features its parts do not settle, the whole comes first. Now scale the point up to its largest possible reach. The particles of the universe have interacted since its earliest moments. On one natural reading, the entire cosmos is a single entangled system. It is described by one wave function covering everything at once. If so, the cosmos is the great whole on which all its parts depend. The argument is powerful, and it leans on choices that remain open. What entanglement means depends on how you interpret the quantum theory. On one interpretation, particles keep definite positions, guided by a non-local field. On another, the wave function is everything, and reality splits into many worlds. On a third, the wave function physically collapses when systems grow large enough. The holism is read differently in each, and the physics alone does not decide. A second worry concerns the leap from small systems to the whole cosmos. Granting that pairs are holistic, it is a further step to one cosmic ground. Local entanglement need not add up to a single fundamental universe. Suppose you doubt the physics, or distrust any single interpretation of it. The monist has a second argument that needs no physics at all. It rests only on a claim about what is possible, not what is actual. Matter, it says, might have no smallest parts, dividing forever without end. If that is even possible, the pluralist foundation may vanish completely, and a vanishing foundation, as we will see, is a serious problem. Part 10. The argument from Gunk. Return to the pluralist, who says the parts are the true foundation. Press on the word parts, and ask which parts carry all the weight. It must be the smallest parts, the simples lying at the very bottom. Everything larger depends on them, the way a wall depends on its bricks. The whole upward story assumes there is a bottom to build from. But what if there is no bottom, and it is parts all the way down? Philosophers have a name for stuff like that, and they call it gunk. Matter is gunky when every part divides into still smaller parts. There is no end to the division, and no smallest partless piece. Cut any region, and each half splits again and again without limit. A gunky world has no simples at the bottom, because it has no bottom. Now watch what Gunk does to the two sides of our debate. The pluralist grounds every object in the ultimate smallest parts. In a gunky world, there are no ultimate parts to do the grounding. There is only an endless chain of larger things leaning on smaller ones. Each part depends on its parts, which depend on theirs, forever downward. The chain never reaches solid ground, so nothing is ultimately fundamental. If reality must have a foundation, then pluralism fails in a gunky world. The monist, by contrast, is completely untouched by the threat. The whole is the foundation, whether or not the dividing ever stops. Dependence runs downward from the cosmos, not upward from a bottom that may not exist. The monist does not even claim the world is actually gunky. Maybe physics will find a smallest part, a true bottom level. Maybe it will not, and space and matter divide without any end. The argument needs only that a gunky world is genuinely possible. If pluralism were the necessary truth, it would have to hold in such a world. Since it cannot, pluralism is not necessary, and monism looks more general. This clever argument has a clever answer, and it cuts the other way. The philosopher Einar Bohn pointed to a mirror image of Gunk. Call a world junky when every object is part of a larger object. There is no biggest thing, no maximal whole that contains all the rest. The chain runs upward without end, each thing swallowed by something larger. Now run the monist's own logic against the monist in this world. If there is no greatest whole, there is no cosmos to be the foundation. Junk starves monism, exactly as Gunk starves pluralism. The symmetry is striking, and it puts both sides in the same bind. Schaffer answers that junk, unlike Gunk, is not really possible. There must always be a top level, the fusion of absolutely everything. Bone replies that you can always combine more, with no guaranteed ceiling. The quarrel turns on whether reality must have a single largest whole. That question is open, and serious philosophers stand on both sides. Some now conclude the whole framework of foundations needs rethinking. Step back and notice what both arguments quietly take for granted. Each assumes that reality must bottom out somewhere, in a whole or in parts. Foundationalism, the demand for a ground, is the unspoken rule of the game. But what if there is no ground, and nothing at all is fundamental? What if existence is dependence all the way through, resting on nothing? Western thought tends to treat that idea as a disaster to be avoided. One of the world's great traditions treats it instead as the truth. It says reality is neither one nor many, and we turn to it next. Part 11. Neither one nor many. Every position so far has shared one deep, unspoken assumption. Reality must have a foundation, some layer of things that stand on their own. The monist puts one such thing at the bottom, the whole cosmos. The pluralist puts many such things there, the ultimate parts. A tradition older than all of them rejects the assumption itself. It says nothing whatever stands on its own, and that this is the truth. Its founder was the Indian philosopher Nagarjuna, writing around the 2nd century. Nagarjuna's central target is a property he calls intrinsic nature. A thing has intrinsic nature when it exists independently, on its own terms. Such a thing would be what it is regardless of anything else. It would need no parts, no causes, no relations to other things. This is exactly the independence that both monist and pluralist demand. Each wants something, the whole or the parts, to have intrinsic nature. Nagarjuna argues that nothing at any level possesses such a nature. The argument runs through dependence, and a famous example carries it. Take a chariot, or for us a car, and ask what it really is. It is not simply identical to its parts, the wheels and frame and axle. A heap of those parts in a pile is no car at all. Yet the car is not something separate from its parts either. Remove every part, and no extra car thing is left hiding behind them. The car is not the parts, and not apart from the parts. It exists only as a useful designation, laid on parts arranged a certain way. Its being is borrowed entirely from the parts, and theirs from their parts. Now push that result down every level and across every kind of thing. Each thing depends on its parts, its causes, and its relations to other things. Nothing carries its existence inside itself, sealed off from the rest. This dependence, with no independent base anywhere, is what Buddhists call emptiness. Emptiness does not mean that nothing exists, which is the crucial misunderstanding. It means things exist only in dependence, never on their own. To be empty is simply to arise in dependence on other things. This is why the school is called the middle way. It steers between two errors that have shadowed our whole inquiry. One error grants something independent existence, whether the one or the many. The other error says nothing exists at all, a flat nihilism. The middle way takes neither road since things exist, but only as dependent. Reality is not fundamentally one, and it is not fundamentally many. It is a web of mutual dependence, resting on no foundation whatever. The view turns its blade even on itself, with unusual honesty. You might think emptiness is the one solid fact, the bedrock at last. Nagarjuna denies even this, since emptiness is itself empty. Emptiness is not a hidden essence behind things, a new foundation in disguise. It is only the fact that things depend, and that fact too depends. There is no final resting place, not even in the doctrine of no resting place. Western philosophers long dismissed this as mysticism, but that has changed. Analytic thinkers now reconstruct these arguments with full logical care. Some, like Graham Priest, find a genuine paradox sitting at the centre. If everything is empty, then the claim everything is empty is itself empty. Then it seems both to assert something true and to undercut itself. Defenders reply that this is a feature, not a flaw, of describing groundlessness. Critics answer that a theory undermining its own statement is in deep trouble. Whether emptiness is profound or self-defeating remains a live and serious debate. Notice what this tradition forces into the open for the others. Monism and pluralism both assumed that some things ground other things. They fought only over the direction, downward from the whole or upward from parts. Neither asked what this grounding is or whether it is even real. That question now sits at the centre of metaphysics, unavoidable and raw. If grounding is a myth, the entire debate about foundations dissolves. Part 12. What grounding is and whether it exists. Through this whole inquiry, one little phrase has been doing silent work. We kept saying one thing depends on another, or holds in virtue of it. The parts depend on the whole, or the whole depends on the parts. This is not causing where one event brings another about in time. It is a deeper relation of one thing holding because of another. Philosophers now call this grounding, and it has its own large literature. Grounding is meant to be the relation that builds reality into levels. A statue is grounded in the clay that makes it up. A crowd is grounded in the people standing in the square. The clay and the people come first, and the statue and crowd follow. Grounding points one way, from the more basic to the less basic. Run it down to the bottom and you reach the fundamental, what grounds all else. Jonathan Schaffer made this relation the very subject of metaphysics. The old question was, what exists? The bare list of things. The better question, he argued, is what grounds what among them. Reality is a layered structure, with everything dangling from a fundamental base. Priority monism is then easy to state in this language. The whole cosmos is the base, and every part is grounded in it. The pluralist simply reverses the arrows, grounding the whole in its parts. Then a sharp objection arrived, aimed at the relation itself. the philosopher Jessica Wilson asked a simple, deflating question. Is there really one big relation called grounding, doing all this work? Look closely, and you find many different relations wearing one name. The statue and clay are tied by one relation, the bond of constitution. A mind and brain may be tied by another, the relation of realization. A set and its members are tied by yet another kind entirely. These behave differently, and lumping them as grounding may explain nothing. On this view, grounding is a label, not a discovery about the world. Suppose we grant that grounding is real and a single relation. A further assumption has been hiding underneath, and it can be questioned. Everyone assumed the chains of grounding must end in a foundation. But why must they end at all, rather than continuing without limit? And why must they run only one way, never bending back on themselves? Some philosophers now defend coherentism about the structure of reality. On this view, things can depend on each other, with no bottom level. Dependence forms a vast loop, or a web supported by nothing outside it. This is the Buddhist groundlessness, rebuilt in the language of analytic logic. The defenders of grounding have strong replies to all of this. They argue the special relations share a common core, a single direction of priority. And they argue that without a foundation, explanation never truly bottoms out. An infinite chain, they say, defers the explaining forever and completes nothing. The coherentist answers that the demand for a foundation is mere prejudice. A system can hold together by mutual support, like an arch with no keystone. None of this is settled, and the field is sharply openly divided. Grounding was also meant to explain the place of mind in nature. The physicalist says mental facts are grounded in physical facts, and nothing more. But one phenomenon has always refused to be grounded in the physical. You can know every physical fact and still not know what seeing red is like. If consciousness cannot be grounded in matter, perhaps it is fundamental instead. And if the cosmos is fundamental, the cosmos itself might be conscious. Part 13. Is the universe one mind? Physics describes the world with stunning success, but it has a blind spot. It tells you what matter does, how it moves, attracts, and combines. It never tells you what matter is in itself from the inside. There is one scrap of reality you know from the inside, your own experience. You know what red looks like, what pain feels like, directly. No list of physical facts seems to capture that inner feel at all. This gap suggests a strange and elegant repair, first hinted at by Russell. Physics gives us only the structure of matter, its pattern of behavior. It leaves a blank where the intrinsic nature of matter should be. What is the stuff that behaves in all these described ways? Consciousness is the one intrinsic nature we have ever actually met. So perhaps experience is what matter is, beneath its outward behavior. This view is called Russellian monism, and it has serious modern defenders. The most straightforward version of the idea is called panpsychism. Every fundamental particle carries a tiny flicker of experience, however faint. Your rich consciousness is then built from countless micro-experiences combined. But here panpsychism hits a wall, known as the combination problem. How do many tiny separate subjects merge into one unified mind? 100 separate feelings do not add up to one single feeling. Your experience is unified, yet its supposed parts are private and separate. No one has shown how the little minds could ever fuse into yours. Notice that panpsychism is priority pluralism applied to the mind. It starts from the tiny parts and tries to build the whole upward. Recent thinkers propose inverting it, using priority monism instead. The view is called cosmopsychism, and it begins at the other end. The whole cosmos is the one fundamental subject, a single field of experience. Individual minds are not built from below, but carved out from above. Your mind is a partial perspective within the one cosmic consciousness. A real phenomenon gives the idea a foothold in something familiar. In rare cases, one human mind seems to split into separate centres. Each centre has its own perspective, walled off from the others, yet all of them are partitions within a single underlying mind. Cosmopsychism says we are like that with respect to the cosmos. One vast consciousness, dissociated into the billions of perspectives we call selves. This inversion is clever, and it buys a familiar problem in reverse. Panpsychism could not explain how many minds combine into one. Cosmopsychism cannot explain how the one mind divides into many. This is called the decombination problem, the exact mirror of the first. How does a single unified subject contain other subjects as its parts? Your experience is sealed off from mine, each a private point of view. How one consciousness splits into sealed compartments is just as obscure. A second objection comes straight from the brain on the operating table. If your mind is a fragment of cosmic consciousness, why does it track neurons? Damage the brain and the mind changes in exact predictable ways. Apply anesthesia and consciousness switches off entirely for a time. The cosmic story owes an account of why the fragment depends so tightly on tissue. Its defenders admit the view is, for now, highly speculative. They offer it less as proof than as the least bad option if experience is fundamental. One frontier reason keeps the idea alive among serious philosophers. The laws of physics appear finely tuned to allow life to exist. A cosmos that somehow responds to value could explain this without a separate God. That hope is contested, and many find it a step too far. Cosmopsychism makes the one fundamental thing a mind, vast and undivided. A rival reading of physics makes the one thing an object in a stranger space. On that view, the single reality is not a mind, but a field. Part 14. The wave function as the only object. Recall the strange lesson from quantum entanglement several steps back. We read it as one whole, bound together by holistic relations among parts. There is a bolder way to read the very same physics. Perhaps the lesson is not that the parts are deeply entangled. Perhaps there were never many parts at all, only one object. This reading is called wave function realism, and physicists defend it seriously. In quantum mechanics, the full state of a system is its wave function. For a single particle, the wave function spreads over ordinary three-dimensional space. For two particles, something surprising happens to where it lives. It is not two waves in our space, but one wave in a larger space. That space has 6 dimensions, 3 for each particle's possible position. For every particle you add, the single space gains 3 more dimensions. This vast arena is what physicists call configuration space. Each of its points fixes the positions of every particle at once. Now take a daring step, the one these physicists actually take. Treat the wave function as a real physical object, an actual field. But it does not live in our familiar three-dimensional world. It lives in that immense configuration space of enormously many dimensions. And that high-dimensional space is the true fundamental arena of reality. Our three-dimensional world, full of separate things, is not fundamental. It is a kind of low-dimensional appearance projected from the one field. This move pays a remarkable dividend on the puzzle of entanglement. In 3 dimensions, entangled particles seem mysteriously linked across space. The link looked like holism, a whole exceeding its separate parts. Lifted into its true high-dimensional home, the mystery quietly evaporates. There, the wave function is one smooth field, behaving locally and simply. Its motion at each point depends only on the points right beside it. The spooky non-locality was an illusion of cramming reality into 3 dimensions. This is monism of a sharp and physical kind, unlike the others. Not one substance, not one mind, but one field in a high-dimensional space. An image helps, though, like all images, it is only a guide. A single object in 3 dimensions can cast a flat 2-dimensional shadow. That shadow may look like several separate blobs on the wall. The many blobs are not many things, but one thing projected. Our crowded world of objects on this view is the shadow of one field. The view faces one formidable objection, and it is the obvious one. It owes us the entire ordinary world, recovered from that alien space. Where are tables, hands, and the laboratory in a field of countless dimensions? Defenders sketch how 3-dimensional patterns could emerge from the high-dimensional field. Critics reply that the sketch is incomplete, and the everyday world is what we observe. A second objection denies that the wave function is an object at all. On a rival view, reality holds ordinary things in ordinary space. The wave function is then not a thing, but a law guiding those things. It is a rule for how matter moves, like gravity, and not a field that exists. If that is right, the world stays in 3 dimensions, and stays many. Wave function realism removes the many by lifting reality to a higher space. There the parts vanish into one field, and oneness is restored at the base. A final move in modern physics goes further than any we have seen. It says the deepest lesson is not one object, but no objects. There are no things at any level, it claims, only structure and relation. If that is true, our whole question was malformed from the first word. Part 15. Structure instead of things. Every view so far has quarrelled about things and how many there are. One thing, many things, one mind, one field. The count kept shifting. All of them assumed there are things in the first place to be counted. Modern physics has been quietly dissolving that very assumption for decades. The position is called ontic structural realism, and it is radical. It says reality at bottom is not things at all, but structure. One road to it runs through the history of science itself. Science keeps overturning its picture of what the basic objects are. Light was once tiny particles, then waves in an invisible ether. Then the ether was abandoned, and light became an electromagnetic field. The objects keep dying in each revolution, discarded and replaced. But something survives almost every upheaval, passing through nearly untouched. The mathematical structure carries over, the equations describing the relations. The equations for light outlived the ether they were first written for. So perhaps structure, not the vanishing objects, is what science really finds. That is the cautious version about what we can know. James Ladyman and Stephen French push it into a claim about being. Structure is not merely all we can know, but all there is. There are no fundamental objects sitting beneath the structure, holding it up. The relations are fundamental, and the so-called things are only nodes in them. Reality is relations, with no independent relator underneath doing the relating. Quantum physics is what drives them toward this strange conclusion. Take two electrons of the same kind, side by side. They are not two individuals the way two coins are. Swap them, and nothing whatever changes, not even in principle. There is simply no fact about which electron is which one. The classical idea of an object fails for them completely. What is real is the structure, the pattern of relations and symmetries. The particles are just places in that pattern, not things with their own identity. An example shows how something can be real without being a thing. Consider the knight in a game of chess and what makes it a knight. It is not the lump of wood or ivory you happen to hold. Replace that piece with a bottle cap, and the knight is unchanged. What makes it a knight is its role, how it moves and relates to others. The piece has no intrinsic knight nature inside it, only a place in the rules. Quantum particles, this view says, are knights with no underlying lumps at all. See what this does to the question we have chased for centuries. Is the universe one thing or many things? We kept asking. Structural realism answers that the question was malformed from the start. It is not one thing, and it is not many things. There are no things at the fundamental level, only structure to be counted. This echoes the Buddhist denial of any intrinsic nature, reached from physics. And it inverts Bradley, who killed relations to save the seamless one. Here the objects die instead, and the relations are what survive. The view meets one powerful objection, the same one Bradley would raise. You cannot have relations, critics insist, without things for them to relate. A between needs something on each side, or it is empty words. Relations floating free of any relator at all seem flatly unintelligible. The structural realist answers that this is only classical prejudice. Relations and their nodes may be equally basic, neither one coming first. And the demand that objects come first is just what physics has overturned. Whether freestanding structure makes sense is still fiercely disputed. The structuralist current now runs to the deepest frontier of physics. In efforts to unite gravity with the quantum, space itself looks derived. Space-time may emerge from a deeper web of relations woven from entanglement. If even space is structure all the way down, things lose their last refuge. We have now met every serious answer the question has produced. It is time to stand back and see where all of them have left us. Part 16. Where the question stands. Now. We began in an ordinary room, counting the separate things inside it. The chair, the cup, the window, the two hands in your lap. That count felt like the most obvious fact about the world. The question of whether it runs deep has fractured into three sharper ones. Each is now a distinct battlefield with its own armies and stakes. The first question asks how many things exist, the plain inventory. Are there particles and wholes both, or only one, or none? The second question asks which of the things that exist are fundamental. Does reality build upward from parts, or downward from the whole? The third question asks whether anything is fundamental at all. Maybe there is a foundation, or maybe dependence runs on forever. These three questions are separate, and a position must answer each one. Within this space, several serious positions are alive and fighting today. Priority monism holds the cosmos is fundamental, with all parts derived from it. Existence monism goes further, saying only the cosmos exists, with no parts. Priority pluralism holds the smallest parts are basic, and the whole is built. Coherentism denies any foundation, with everything depending on everything else. Wave-function realism makes reality one field in a high-dimensional space. Cosmopsychism makes the one fundamental thing a single cosmic mind. Structural realism removes the things entirely, leaving only structure and relation. Step back from the map, and a startling pattern comes into focus. These positions disagree about almost everything, yet they share one direction. Nearly all of them move away from the picture we started with. They split into two great families, both leaving common sense behind. One family says reality is, at bottom, a single thing. The other says there are no fundamental things, only structure or dependence. The view almost no sophisticated position now defends is the obvious one, that the world is simply many separate objects, each standing on its own. This is not because the matter has been settled in someone's favour. It has not, and the deepest questions remain genuinely, stubbornly open. Whether reality has any foundation at all, no one can yet say. Whether the wave function is an object or only a law, physicists still argue. Whether there are individuals at the bottom or only relations stays raw and unresolved. Even whether grounding is one real relation is still in serious doubt. Along the way, the question itself has quietly transformed in our hands. We thought we were asking how many things the world contains. We were really asking something stranger and more basic than that. Does the world arrive already divided into things on its own? Or is the dividing something we bring to it for our own purposes? Whether thing is a feature of reality or a habit of minds like ours. So return one last time to the room where we started. The chair, the cup, the window, your own two hands. The count still works perfectly well for living an ordinary life. You can reach for the cup, and your hand will find it. But whether that count reaches the bottom of things is another matter. It may trace the deep structure of reality, or only the shape of our needs. The most certain fact we began with has become the least secure. That the world is many separate things is the one claim we cannot confirm.